Well, thank you so much for joining us here on AccuWeather Weekend. I'm Bree.
And I'm Melissa Constanzer. We are covering quite a bit for you across the southeast as the stormy weather just persists.
Yeah, we just can't shake the wet pattern, and we're tracking even more tropical impacts here to the U.S. So with that, we'll get you started with a look at satellite and radar here across the country, just to kind of get a feel of where the action actually is and where it isn't.
And you can see some of the green on the board focused on not only the Mississippi Valley, but extending into states like Alabama, and then pushing on the Carolina coast is more moisture just offshore.
Now you'll note that the Northeast, you're high and dry, the Great Lakes high and dry, and really not much action here right now across the nation's midsection. Highs there going to be running in the 80s. Development near the U.S. coast and unleash coastal flooding and beach erosion, all nasty stuff, as well as the potential for dangerous flooding rainfall.
And there is also the risk because of Francine, which is stalled out due to some high pressure to the north and a big sea of dry air that's there. Steering breezes have left over this moisture, and it's been strung out in a pretty narrow zone, unfortunately, which means for some, it's a wet time. There's a couple 100 miles where we're talking about it from the Mississippi Valley into Alabama, and that's going to be where they continue to get some of the rain. And because of the bands of excessive rain that are likely to occur, few inches of rain is possible as we head through the rest of the weekend. So we're going to get started on the flood threat, but first we do want to talk about this developing storm along the coast of the Carolinas, which is a tropical rainstorm.
Yeah, and you know, it's not surprising. We have this storm, we have this area of low pressure that is sitting right offshore. We're classifying this as a tropical rainstorm until it does develop, and we have a pretty high chance of development here. That's going to go from today through Tuesday. So right now, AccuWeather is forecasting a further strengthening and making landfall as a tropical storm. Right now, you can see where that storm is blossoming or continuing to gather that strength. That's sitting over some pretty warm waters here in the Atlantic, right off of the southeast coast. Temperatures right now hovering in the 80s. So plenty of fuel to feed this storm, and as it continues to move closer to land and with those steering winds and that steering flow, it is going to take more of a northerly track once it does get further inland. Though either way, it's going to be dumping a lot of rain here, especially along the Carolina coast. Helene, our next name on the list, that is going to be our H name. We already have Gordon, of course, still monitoring Gordon out in the mid-Atlantic, but it's a fish storm. It's not necessarily going to be impacting anybody on land. That eye path that we have here through Wednesday, we are anticipating
mixed down enough to create any of the poor air quality conditions. But we'll discuss that northern forecast in a moment. However, this week it has been a lot about the rainfall, and it's always difficult to recover after a flood. But Ariel Scalise has, of course, that's some good tips after this past week's rain. If you look at last week here, you can see across southern Louisiana how much rainfall fell. In many spots, they picked up 4 to 8 inches of rainfall. A few spots, like around New Orleans, closer to 10 inches. Now that we are finished with that system, we've gotten a chance to dry out a little bit farther to the west. We're staying dry. We just haven't caught a break. Hot weather still holding on here, which means the numbers are back up into the mid and upper 90s. This time of year, a lot of us want to start to see those numbers go down. It just hasn't been the few spots. They could challenge records as we head throughout today. Some spots across Texas, like Austin, Texas, for example, headed to 101 for that high, which could break the record set back in 1953. So we'll have to see how hot it gets, but ultimately, it does stay pretty hot. We're going to add in some moisture, though, which means eventually we'll start to see those numbers come down in a few locations. You can see Monday adding in the chance for rain in a couple of locations here, including along the Gulf Coast from Houston off towards the east across Louisiana, at least a few showers and thunderstorms. Well, as we talk about things off the East Coast, we are going to be adding in that moisture soon enough from what might be, again, that homegrown development here. Virginia Beach at least getting some showers of a more tropical nature here with that moisture coming in from the Atlantic. Meanwhile, off towards the north, We're keeping things mild and dry as we head through your Sunday. 89 for the high in Chicago. It's actually going to feel a little bit more like summer. Places like Buffalo, 85 degrees. New York City still headed up to 80 for the afternoon high. If you look off towards the west, though, there's more moisture brewing, and it's going to fuel some showers and thunderstorms here. So we'll see the return of that as we start off the work week in several locations across the Dakotas, even off towards the east, towards the I-35 corridor from Des Moines to Minneapolis. So we're starting in Virginia Beach, and we're adding some of those clouds to Washington, D.C. as the moisture lifts northward from that tropical system. So we will be talking about from that, I should say, onshore flow and Atlantic flow coming through. So we will be talking about more rain to come across the mid-Atlantic. We're also going to be adding in that chance for showers and thunderstorms across the north-central tier of the nation, especially across the Dakotas. We'll watch for some of those strong, severe thunderstorms, fire.
Reason that we have people stationed out along the mid-Atlantic and southeast coast, anywhere from Virginia down through South Carolina. That's because we have this high chance of development with this tropical rainstorm already having tropical characteristics either way, but still there is that chance for strengthening, and we do have that high chance for strengthening here Sunday through Tuesday, and that's sitting right off of the Carolina coast. I do want to bring us out to satellite here just to kind of show you where that energy is. You can see those. Of course, we're going to fine tune this as this storm strengthens and develops, but either way, we are tracking that significant rainfall threat, and that's going to extend from Pennsylvania all the way down through the mid-Atlantic. That is going to bring that risk of rough surf, beach erosion, because we do have that concern for storm surge here that extends along the Outer Banks and down through Myrtle Beach. Through Wednesday, we could see storm surge upwards to 1 to 3 feet. So rough waters definitely going to be a big. Well, thank you so much for sticking with us here on AccuWeather Weekend. We've been covering it all. A lot of eyes have been on the tropics, and millions continue to. Unfortunately, yes, the destruction was widespread there across the Gulf Coast as Francine made its way onshore and then eventually even further north. Not quite reaching the northern tier of the country. We are mostly dry here, and that's going to last throughout the rest of the weekend into Monday as this high pressure stays strong. And this high pressure has been deflecting a lot of moisture here over the last few days, and we could really use some rain, especially there across the Ohio Valley, back there across the nation's midsection, where we are still talking about that expanding drought potential. Though highs by the afternoon, you probably won't see too many complaints if you're in the Big Apple. 80 here for the high today. Washington, D.C., you're at 82. Columbus, 91. In Pittsburgh, you'll hit a high of 85. Taking a look at the west now, we have some monsoonal moisture pushing north, and this is going to last here through Monday with a few thunderstorms and showers here across parts of the desert southwest, mostly here across Arizona, even pushing there through parts of Mojave County and then up through the southern portion of Utah and Colorado, and even extending there across western New Mexico. So we could see the rain. We could use the rain for sure, though. You know, in this area, it doesn't take much for flooding. So a quick downpour, especially in these lower flat, drier areas, burn scar areas from previous wildfires, that could cause some problems. So it is going to provide that drought relief. Though we are tracking that threat for lightning, and since it's not necessarily going to be too wet, we could see some dry lightning as well, which could cause some concerns. A big change here, though, on the way throughout the early week. We have this storm that's going to be barreling in this area of low pressure. We have this dip in the jet stream. Overall, a lot of troughing happening across the west, and that's going to bring with it more of that unstable weather when it comes to the rain, though it is going to be bringing us cooler conditions, and we could really use those cooler conditions, and we could really use the rain, because if you